everyone, Eric here from Healing Relationship. This is our weekly recorded session, and every week I meet with a special guest and we talk about relationship, healing and self-empowerment. I believe that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. So today I'm very glad to have with me as my guest Louise Armstrong from UK. Louise, thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you so much, and it's a real honor and a privilege to be here. And Eric and I have so much in common. We have very different backgrounds, but we work in so many similar ways. It's fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, absolutely. I remember I met you like almost 1.5 years ago, and you invited me to be a guest on your own very successful podcast. Let's talk about relationship, right?
Yeah.
And since then we have also collaborated doing online workshop together, and that is true. Our values and our work are very aligned. So that's really great. But let me introduce you, Louise. So Louise is trained and accredited by the consistently rated excellent, amazing Transformation Institute and Essex Institute of Clinical Hypnosis and Psychotherapy in the UK. She has personally trained by NLP Phil Edwards and Dr. Leila Edwards. This is why her passion in life is to help people around the world become the masters of their own emotional intelligence so they can heal their inner wounds and create lasting, loving relationships. Since fighting her own healing, Louise has gained professional qualifications dealing both with the conscious and subconscious mind. Now she's able to help worldwide people create the relationship they crave, allowing them to love themselves and those who are important to them. So welcome, Louise. Did I miss anything? Do you want to add anything to that mini bio introduction of yours?
No, that's lovely. Thank you, Eric. It's just that really, I never set out in life to be a psychotherapist or a hypnotherapist or a coach or any of these things. I was actually a trader in the financial world, very, very far from what I'm doing. But it's because of my own, severe woundings with the very, very destructive relationships, and from healing those, I've developed such a passion to help others, because I just truly believe that people don't know what to do. And I honestly think that's all it is. They just don't know what to do. And so that's where it comes from, a very personal place, not something I set out in life to do, which is many of us come along that, many of us come to be doing what we're doing because of that. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yeah, so tell me more about, I think we hear a lot about emotional intelligence, self-mastery, but I'm not sure that everyone is really familiar with that. So would you tell me something about emotional intelligence? And I know you have a course and a group that you teach people how to do that. So I'm very curious to have your own definition of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Eric. And it's actually becoming more and more known and more accepted now in society, in not only the personal world, but very much in the corporate world. And so I like to keep everything very simple. As you mentioned, I run online courses. I do one-on-one private work. I have a lovely active Facebook group, and I've got a presence on LinkedIn and Instagram, and it's all around, the same thing. Emotional intelligence is actually you understanding yourself. So you are emotionally aware of what is going on inside of you. And the reason for that is you are then able to show up in the world with those people who are important to you, with those people at work, within society, without your own agenda. Because so often today we make it about us. So if your boss is in a really bad mood and shouting and having a go, it then really affects you. So if you can show up at work in the workplace and know it's nothing to do with you, this is his stuff, you are then able to react very differently. So the very first step in emotional intelligence is being aware of your emotions, that nobody can make you happy or sad. What is happening in your environment with that person or where you are or that experience is something is triggering something inside of you. And it becomes very empowering when you understand what is going on inside of you, that anger, resentment, frustration, whatever it is, you can then change that. But you can only do that when you're aware of it and when you know that it's coming from inside of you and not from that person. My husband drives me mad. He makes me so angry. No, he doesn't. He's triggering something inside of you. So we can then show up to be very, very different people in the world, and our energy inside of us changes. And as that changes and we respond differently to other people, they then respond differently to us. And this is how we strengthen relationships, through our energy, not through what we say to people, and not really through our behavior either. So it's at a very, very deep level, and we need to have that real understanding about ourselves. And I know, Eric, you very much come from this place, you know, of the relationship with yourself, because it really does change. You know, it changes your perspective of you and your perspective of the world that you live in. And that's really what emotional intelligence is about. And as you go through that process, you'll also understand that perhaps you do have these deep woundings. And so if you are feeling anxious, or perhaps from depression, or there's things going on in everyday today life, they didn't start in your adult life. These things, you know, very, very much probably started when you were very small. And then we can go through that process to heal those deep wounds, because when they are healed, you will find then that these things do not show up in your adult life. So I'm hugely passionate about this, because I truly believe it's nothing to do with people's, you know, they're not intelligent and they haven't got the intellect. It's just purely people don't know. And that's why I think it's so important to get this message across in a very simple way. You know, life is so complicated, and relationships are probably one of the most complicated thing we ever have to navigate in our world. Let's keep this simple. And that's what I try and do. Does that help, Eric?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's so powerful. I totally relate with you, but you explain that in a very simple way that I think a lot of people will understand that. But let me ask you a question, because I was hearing you talking about the wounds, you know, what happened in our childhood. And there is one thing that I like to tell people. It's not because you had a bad or a good childhood. You can have the best parents or you can have the worst parents. We will carry some wounds. We will carry some traumatic experience, because I believe that our brain is like almost a meaning-making machine. So if something happened, we make it mean something. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the reality, but it's just what we do, right? We create stories in our head. And I think as a child, if I reflect on my own childhood, I did made it mean a lot of things about something that happened to me. When now I have the emotional intelligence and I have the capacity to reflect on that, it wasn't that bad, but I made it bad for some reason. I didn't have the best parents, but I didn't have the worst parents. They were just trying their best, right? So what I want to say about that is, can you tell us more how those wounds are created?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would love your take on that.
I'll just start off with that actually human beings and intelligent mammals all love their children unconditionally, or 99.9% of people. There are a small proportion of the population through their own, you know, perhaps brain damage or something along those lines, unable to do this. But if we just think of the 99.9, it's a large proportion, love their children unconditionally. Now that doesn't mean that they won't come in and verbally abuse them or sexually abuse them or emotionally abuse them. That has nothing to do with love, because love is unconditional. What that means is that parents' wounds are so bad, are so deep, they are unable to express themselves in any other way. This isn't about right or wrong. No child should be harmed. You know, it's never right or wrong. We're not talking about right or wrong. But I just want the understanding here that even if that parent is harming that child, it doesn't mean they don't love them. It's the child that puts the condition on the love. So if the child is not nurtured in a way that they think they need to be nurtured and loved, they put the condition on the love. If I was, you know, thinner, fatter, more intelligent, quieter, louder, prettier than my sister, whatever it is, it's the child that does that, not the parent. And so as a child, we grow up with this perspective of ourselves that we are not good enough. The parent didn't give you that. It's the child's perspective. So when we come to that understanding as an adult, because as a small child, you're not emotionally intelligent and you're not intellectually intelligent. So you don't have that intelligence to comprehend what is going on. So you grow up with what we call a wound, and it can be described as a mask, so that you become that different person. So if your mother always praised you when you did a perfect job at school, or or you looked nice or whatever, you will create this image of you being perfect. And so you want everything perfect in your life because you believe this is what love is. You will be loved. But your mother would actually love you whether you're completely scruffy and get a D in school, or whether you're amazing in school and get an A in school. It has nothing to do with love. So the child puts the condition on that love. So as adults, we learn that our parents, all of our parents, did the very, very best they could at that very moment in time with the information and the knowledge they had, and if they did inflict suffering upon you, that is because of their wounds. It is not because there's something wrong with you, because so many of us grow up in shame. I know for me, I had huge shame that there was something wrong with me because I didn't feel loved. I felt unlovable. And if you don't feel loved and unlovable, you cannot then create that relationship with anybody else. So the real basis in all of this is acceptance, that what? My childhood wasn't the best. My childhood wasn't the worst. I did the best as a little girl, as a little boy, to get through childhood. And we know you did your best because you're still here today. And everything else is learning. And so that we take away the blame, we take away that blame, because we cannot move on in life if we are continually blaming, if only this, if only that. So when we come to a place of acceptance, that is where the growth really starts, and that is where the learning and the healing really does begin. And it's a lifelong journey. We continue to go along. So does that help, Eric? Does that sort of...
Yeah, that's really powerful and beautiful. I really love how you articulate all of that. I totally agree with you. It's just beautiful. So thank you very much for sharing that, Louise. It's really, really powerful, and I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that. So tell me one thing. Because when we have wounds, sometimes, and if I refer to my own experience, you mentioned shame, right? And I think we grew up and we have some shame about, there is something wrong with me. And I think everybody can relate to that. I don't know anyone who can say, who never thought about there is something wrong with me, right? Even the most confident people in the world. So then we grew up with that, and we carry that shame or that guilt, and we don't feel comfortable with that. So what would you say is the shifting point, or maybe the turning point, where people can start to be responsible and to start working on their wants? Is there any shifting point? Do you think so?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things, and it depends on the person. But I think one of the shifting points is we often, as we grow up, we develop shields and soothers, to soothe the wound and to shield the wound. And this could be anything from food to alcohol to porn addiction to shopping. Doesn't really matter what it is. What we're doing is we're trying to fill the void. We're trying to fill that wound. And then we use shielding. It might be, you become hugely successful and your expensive house and car, they become, part of your shield, so nobody gets to the wound, because we don't want anyone near this wound to see the real us. And I think at some point we realize these shielders and soothers just aren't working. They just are not working for us anymore. That bottle of wine on a Thursday night is just not cutting it. It's not taking it away. I now need a bottle and a half. And so sometimes that is what it is for some people. Sometimes, I know for me myself, I had a massive shock when my mother told me to my face she didn't love me. So that was, whoa, okay. I've got to seriously think about what I'm going to do next with my life. So sometimes it's a shock in people's lives. So it's different things for different people. But I think also now it's becoming a lot more open and acceptable to reach out for help. It's a sign of courage. If you put your hand up and say, this isn't working for me anymore, I really don't know what to do. It's becoming more and more acceptable and understood today that that really is a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness, because so many of us are brought up that you should sort it out yourself, etc., etc. And I just want to bring that shame in today, just so people have that real understanding, because this is also where people come to that turning point as well. If you're told as a small child that it's wrong to express anger, so you shouldn't behave like that, you're a really naughty boy, you're a nasty girl, you know, to express yourself in that way, you will then push that anger down inside of you. But emotions are all energy and they have to move. So as that get pushed down inside of you, it starts to grow. And over years, those anger cells will actually manifest. And then what will happen is you'll explode at some ridiculous things, like you spill a cup of coffee and you just have this huge anger problem. But what's worse than that is when you feel anger towards somebody, your parents have told you there's something wrong with you. You shouldn't behave like that. You now feel this innate shame. And it's the shame that eats the soul. And it's actually the shame that's worse, actually more harmful than actually the anger, because anger is a natural primal response that we need to learn to express in a healthy way. And it's okay to feel angry, you know, it's okay to feel all of these emotions, frustrations. Of course, this is being a human being. We don't just feel joyful all day. That's cuckoo land, you know. So I think it's, you know, we come to our own different realizations, and sometimes it's a shock, and sometimes we just find it's not working for us, and sometimes we've just had enough, you know, or sometimes we fall across different things perhaps on the internet. So I think it's very different. Did you think that as well, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. But as I was hearing you talking, I was thinking, how can we encourage? Because in my clientele today, I have a lot of young people. When I say young people, it's almost in their 30s, and I'm happy about that. So happy about that, because if I got the help that they have today at 30s, wow, my life would be so different, right? But at 30s, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know about seeking for help. I mean, I did seek for help, and I was in psychotherapy, but somehow I didn't have the tools really to be emotionally intelligent, right? So how can we encourage people to have the courage to say, okay, there is something that is not working in my life, and I want to find a way to address it now. Whether I am in a good place in my life or whether I am in a bad place in my life. How can we encourage people to make the first move or the first start?
I think the first thing what you can do is ask what isn't working in your life. You know, you can really go into yourself and actually even just write a few things down. You know, what isn't working? How do I want my life to be? And then look at yourself and what can I do? Is there anything I can do that's different in my life? Because if we understand how the mind works, it is purely just a set of neural pathways. That's all it is. It's a set of habits. So we've got these circuits, hundreds of millions of thousands of circuits going on in the mind. And if those aren't working for you, the question to ask yourself is, how can I create new ones? You know, how am I going to create a different life? Because if you want a different life, you have to come from a different space. So I think one of the first things before because it's a big thing to put your hand up, is actually to do some work on yourself and actually just start writing. Just really start getting those thoughts out of you and onto paper. And you may really have some realizations that you are actually an amazing person. There's some wonderful things about you, but it's just not working. It's just not the real you. Why am I living behind this mask? Why am I behaving like I do? And then come to the realization that any successful person here on earth has not done it by themselves. I can promise you that. So, you know, when that actually sinks in, and it sinks in that it's okay to seek for help, you can then start doing your research. You know, you don't have had to have reached out at this point, but just start looking. Just start looking maybe on the internet. If you use social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, you know, Google information, just start looking what's out there and see what resonates with you. what resonates with you? And maybe somebody does. Maybe somebody's story resonates with you. And if you resonate with that person, because it's really important to have a connection with that person, it's at that point you then reach out and just say, just like to have a chat with you. And that's all. That's all it is. And I truly think that the starting off with just getting some clarity of what's whizzing around that mind of yours, those hamster loops that we go round and round and round, can really help us start off on that journey. What do you think, Eric?
No, I totally agree. I really like what you just said. Yeah, absolutely. Starting just to self-reflect and then look for, being inspired by other people who had maybe more courage or have been on different paths. And I also think that when we seek for help, it's not the same help for everyone. Maybe someone will reach out to a coach, someone will reach out to a psychiatrist, someone will reach out to a counselor. You have to find your own way, your own paths. And there are so many paths and so many modalities that we can use today. Even you're talking about energy, there is energy healing, there is tapping, there is so many modalities that you can find. So I would say that people need to find what's right for them. If it's tapping, great. If it's psychotherapy, great. If it's finding a relationship coach, wonderful. Just find the thing that relates with you and just start, step by step, baby step. But I love what you said at the beginning, that it's about acceptance. I mean, I do believe that when we start to accept our circumstances, and our life and say, yeah, that's okay, that's my life. But it's just my circumstances. I don't have to identify myself with my circumstances. I know for me, it was a huge shift when I started to step back and said, okay, this is my experience so far, and my experience hasn't been great, but this is not who I am. I know that there is something else. I know I can feel that in my body. I can feel that in my mind. I can feel that with my intuition, right?
Absolutely, Eric.
So if I step back from that and I don't identify myself with that, well, what can I do now? How can I take responsibility and take charge of my life? And you mentioned that. So I really believe that.
Yeah, no, I so relate with that, because
about the blaming. Yeah, when we stop about blaming, when we stop being victim, right? I used to be a victim of my life. I used to do that, say, no, this is not my fault.
Absolutely.
Right?
I spent a lifetime doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I do think it's a lifetime process. You mentioned that at the beginning, but I think it's great to remind people that it's a lifetime process.
Yeah.
Whenever we go through life, we evolve. Even if you and I, we are in a great place in our life right now. I mean, in the way how we handle our life, but we are still facing challenges, right? We are just human.
Absolutely.
But we just have a different perspective and a different way to deal with the challenges that we have.
That's it, Eric. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so let me ask you one question. What is the best advice you ever received in your life that made a really big difference for you?
The best advice from somebody.
Yeah.
Let me think back. It was very early on in my healing. It was very early on in my healing. I mean, the greatest, and I'd really love to just share this with people in case somebody out there is really suffering and what have you. But my deepest pain, my greatest healing, if you like, came from my deepest pain. And that was my mother saying to my face, I do not love you. This is your stuff. I will never change. So that actually had the greatest impact. I bring back in there. That wasn't advice, but that was the greatest impact, because that made me like that. Right, I've got to be responsible for myself. She's telling me, Doesn't mean I wasn't angry, upset, hurt, and I wanted her to hurt. I wanted her to feel my pain. It doesn't mean all of that. But it was at that moment I did start to take responsibility for my life. But my very first coach, she said to me, if you don't start looking at you, Louise, nothing will ever change in your life. Because I was always looking for somebody else or something else to make it better. The next book, the next coach, the next course, the next whatever it was. It was all about everything else and not about me. So the day that I was told that, and I really thought, I've got to be in control of this. I've got to get into the driving seat of the car and get out of the passenger seat. And I was continually looking for that driver. and it just really didn't work for me.
Thank you for sharing that. It's really powerful. Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Especially, yeah, I think you're right, because a lot of people are reading, seeking. I mean, but at some point, I mean, in my life, for me, I'm always a seeker, and I'm still a seeker, but in a different way today.
A different way, yes.
Yeah,
A
in a
learning
different way.
It's a learning way now, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more learning way, or it's more going through an experience and see what can I get from that experience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think at some point we need to, I mean, if some people listen to that and they are still seeking and looking, at some point we feel a shift that we don't need to seek anything else, that we have everything we need inside ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we start to reground ourselves or realign ourselves with just what's inside ourselves, it makes the journey easier. Yeah. It makes the journey more beautiful.
It goes more in the flow, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Because it all really boils down to, we are far greater than any of our thoughts. You know, you're far greater than your thoughts, than your emotions. These are just experiences you're going through. So if you're angry or if you're sad, it doesn't make you an angry person, doesn't make you a sad person. You're just having that experience of anger. And you can actually choose, and this is where the responsibility comes in. Do I want to feel angry for 5 days, or shall I feel angry for 5 minutes? You know, and that's where the choice comes in and the responsibility. But you're far greater as a person than these are just experiences. But I think we get so involved and wrapped up with those thoughts and those emotions because they're continually going on in our minds. And I think when you do that healing, you really do come to that place of, yeah, I do get to choose. I do get to choose.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I have another question for you, because a lot of people, we live in an era where the stress is huge, and a lot of people experience anxiety, and a lot of my clients, they at some point they will come and say, I feel anxious, and what do I do when I feel anxious? Do you have like an advice or maybe a strategies or tools that people can use to overcome anxiety?
I actually have a whole program on anxiety. I deal a lot with anxiety because it's super common. So the first thing is anxiety is not real, okay? So an anxiety attack is not real. It's not like a terrorist attack where you've got the terrorist conducting the attack. There is no anxiety causing the attack. Anxiety is just a state of mind, and it's actually there to protect you, because the reason why you're feeling anxious is because at some point in your life you did something that didn't work out. It did not work out well. So now your mind sets up a load of symptoms of heart palpitations, of, sweaty palms, of your mind going in overdrive. You feel like you might be having, some people feel like they're having a real heart attack. The symptoms are very real, but the anxiety isn't. And it's all to stop you doing that thing. It's all to stop you. So if we take social phobia, if you've had a really bad experience at a party meeting new people, next time you're going to feel anxious. So it's your mind's way of protecting you. That's all it's doing. But if we have the understanding that it's not real, and I have lots of different tools, because different tools work with different people, but, which we haven't got time to share today. But what I can share with you right now is the one thing that really helps any anxious person is the breath. Now, this is because breathing is an automated response. You don't have to think about breathing, and you just continue to breathe. But it's one of the automated responses that we can actually control. And when you're in an anxious state, you feel out of control. You feel that the anxiety is just completely taking over, and I don't even know where it came from, because it's actually coming from the subconscious mind. So you can be standing in a shower just thinking about having breakfast, and boom, there's the anxiety attack. Where did that come from? That's because it's on an automated response that you're not even aware of. So if we go back to this breath of ours and we take control of the breath, it signals to the brain that, you are now in control. The anxiety is not in control. And it also gives the brain more oxygen. So it does two things. Because when we feel anxious, you're actually using the top half of your lungs, where the emotions are, and they become exacerbated. So those emotions of excitement as well, when you get super excited, you just breathe very, very shallowly, very, very small, sharp breaths. And it's the same thing when you're feeling anxious. So if you change your breathing pattern and start to breathe and use the whole of your lungs, the bottom part of your lungs, if you like, more like a yoga breath, that is where the emotions that are released are calming. So you will start to naturally calm yourself down. And the most effective breath is actually the 4-7-8 breath. So as soon as you feel that first twinge, and it's always better, the first state of awareness, you will know what your first thing is. You breathe in for the count of 4, you hold it for 7, and you breathe out for the count of 8. And all you do is continue to use that breath, and the anxiety will subside. And it's telling your mind that I am actually in control and not you. And if you can take it one step further, you can bring to mind a picture. So you just visualize anything that makes you feel calm. It could be you sitting having a cup of tea. It could be taking a walk in the fresh air. It could be sitting on the beach. It doesn't matter what it is. You just bring that picture to mind. And the more you practice this, the more your mind will know. Because remember, your mind doesn't know what to do. And so many people think it should be instant. You are reprogramming your mind. So if we go back to the social anxiety that you went to a party and it was an awful experience, your mind now is programmed to feel anxious. So you want to reprogram it that going to the party, I'm in control of my breathing. I feel calm through the breath and through the picture in your mind. So that's kind of the start of it. But I think it's really important to get the message across that it is not real. The symptoms are real, but it's not real. It's just literally the way you are thinking. It's just one of those neural pathways that you've triggered, and you want to trigger the calm one, not the anxious one. But we have to retrain the brain. So it takes practice. Repetition, repetition, repetition. That's all my clients here. Because that's how we create a belief. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. I do think, I'm like you, I do think that the breathing, it's one of the most powerful tools that we can have, right? Whatever we're going through, whether it's anxiety or whether it's sadness or whatever, right? Going back to the breath is really what can make us more at ease. And I love that you said that it's a state of mind. So if it's a state of mind, I can change my state of mind.
Yeah.
And, I practice a lot of visualization with my clients, and I can show them like in a few seconds, bam, we can change the state of mind.
Yeah.
If we put ourselves into that. And I love that you said that it's a practice, that it doesn't come overnight, but we still need to practice until it makes it easier and until we master that, right?
Yeah, until it's automated. And once it's automated and you have then got that as an automatic program, that is your go-to. That is your go-to, and not the anxiety program. Your go-to is the calm one. And it does take practice. But remember, every single time you are practicing the calm, positive one, it means you're not focusing on the anxious one. And you can only ever have one thought in your mind at any time. So it has a double whammy, because the more that you use those neural pathways, the more they grow. And the more they grow, the easier it is for your mind to go down that neural pathway. And the less you use the anxious one, it begins to shrivel and wither away. So think of those neural pathways as muscles. If you didn't walk for 3 months, your leg muscles would really wither away, because you've got to use them. And this is the same with our neural pathways. The more positive and calming neural pathways that you use, the stronger they get.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's so powerful. I really love the conversation we're having today. Let me ask you a totally different question. What do you do? What do you do when you don't coach people or help people? What do you like to do?
What do I do? Well, at the moment, we have a super, super exciting project. It's a lifelong dream. My husband and I, we are building our own home. So it's the most exciting thing we've ever done. It's also one of the most stressful things we've ever done, bringing it all together. So that is taking a lot of my time at the moment, choosing flooring, choosing that, you have to choose everything to the light switch. So it's a huge project. I adore walking my dogs. I'm very much a dog person. Our dog had 5 puppies last year, and they've all gone to friends and family. So I often look after other people's dogs too. They're miniature schnauzers. That is our passion, is dogs. And I'm very sociable. Now having moved back to the UK, having spent 16 years in Dubai, we moved back last November. I'm really catching up with family and friends, and it's so lovely to be with people in my own country, although it's windy and it's rainy and, you know, it's just home for me. So I'm spending a lot of my time doing that. And also I'm very privileged to do this, although it does make me sad. And, you know, as Eric said, we're all going through these challenges in life. My father has very serious Alzheimer's and dementia. So I care a lot for him. I bath him, I put him to bed, I read him stories, I help feed him. So he's a big part of my, you know, my time back here. But I look at it as a privilege that he's still here and he's a happy soul. Sometimes he's not sure who I am. He says, the lad has arrived, the lad. So life is full, life is busy. And it's always hard to get that balance, especially in business, between your own personal life and, you know, with serving your clients. And I am addicted to my phone. Yes, maybe I need some help there, because I spend a lot of time, you know, on my phone. And I'm always working to create more life balance.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that, Louise. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So we are almost at the end of an interview today. Yeah, it goes very fast when we have
we
this
just
deep
started.
conversation now. So one thing, where if people wants to reach out with you, how can they find you?
I think probably the easiest place, because everything is on there, is on my website, because I have, you know, lots of different places. I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, but my website is www.louise-armstrong.com, and you'll find a lot of information there. And I'm always a very open person, and if it's just a simple conversation, always happy to help in any way I can. It's not that you know, you're going to end up working with me or anything like that. Not at all. I give away a huge amount because that's what some people just need at that moment in time. And so please always feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear your story too.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I do know that you have a lot of resources in your website. That's so true. So thank you for your insights. Thank you for your authenticity. Thank you for this deep conversation. I really loved it. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much, Louise. You want to have a final word before I wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much, Eric. You're a wonderful man, and I think you run an amazing business, and I think you have a beautiful heart. I think and your passion really exudes across, and it's an honor and a privilege to connect with you, and it's an honor and a privilege, you know, for the listeners today to be able to enjoy this space. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Louise. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, everyone, it's time to say goodbye. So until next week, don't forget, as I always say, when you open your heart, you have all the love you need. So be well, seek for joy, and live in peace. And I'll see you next week for a new interview. Bye-bye.